lords and ladies. Today we're going to talk about the Protestant Reformation. We're talking about a time when the church is going to switch. We're going to see a huge split. So the objectives for today, we have to be able to analyze Martin Luther's role in this Reformation that's coming. We have to be able to define nationalism as a term and why it's important. And you're going to have to be able to evaluate how the printing press plays a role in the Protestant Reformation. So anything you already know about it, which you probably do know more than you realize, you know that the church is going to split. So we have to look at what does Martin Luther do in terms of making that split happen? How does nationalism provide yet another challenge to the church? And in terms of the printing press, what is that going to do for the Protestant Reformation, and why is that important to this concept? So if you need more time, you might want to pause it, because we're going to switch over in a second. So reform, the word there in Reformation, reform, means change. So change can be for the good or for the bad, but it just means change. And Protestant, right, protest, you see there? Protesting the church. For people to want to do that, they were dissatisfied with the church. They were not happy with the church. The church was becoming, in people's eyes, far too worldly, far too secular. They were doing things that the people did not agree with and that did not seem terribly Christian to them, one of which was huge amounts of taxes just heaped upon the peasants that they cannot afford to pay and that they cannot get out from under. So these are very frustrating things for the peasantry. The other thing is called indulgences, and what happens here is you could purchase an indulgence. And an indulgence is a pardon from the Pope that you could buy to shorten your time in purgatory. Purgatory is the concept that you go to purgatory right when you die to be judged whether you're going to heaven or hell, so that you would immediately go to heaven, or you would, get out of purgatory faster. So indulgence is, the whole concept is that you can pay for salvation. And for Christians, especially poor Christians, this is very upsetting, because that's essentially saying rich people can get out of hell free. And, well, for $50, whatever the price of the indulgence is, so that they can just buy their way out. And that doesn't seem very Christian. So people are already starting to question the church. And now what you're going to see is, as the kings are solidifying their power, as they've done in the later Middle Ages and through here now the Renaissance, you're going to see people start to feel nationalism. And you're going to see now that their devotion and their loyalty is going to shift. In the Middle Ages, it was all chaotic, and people just needed some stability. So the church is what they became loyal and devoted to. Now that they have more stability and the kings are getting powerful, countries are experiencing massive amounts of trade, you're going to start to see nationalism grow. And nationalism just means that you have devotion or pride in your country or your state where you live. This becomes a problem because people start to become more devoted to their country than they are to the church, and that for the church is threatening. So we're going to see that that will have an impact on the church's power as well. Nationalism is not going to be a huge force, though, until we talk about Napoleon later on, and we will do that later this year. Okay, in 1517, you have the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. So people are already dissatisfied with the church, as you've seen. In 1517, Martin Luther, who is a known devout man, believes in the precepts of the church and the religion and the faith. Okay, he gets very vocal and very vocal with the church. And so you see that Martin Luther is going to then nail his, what they call the 95 Theses on the church door. So he's a monk, by the way. I guess I should mention that. So he is a religious man. He disagrees especially with the indulgences. He disagrees with the fact that the church has so much money. So he makes this list of complaints called the 95 Theses. So this is a list of complaints. He posts it on the door of the church. And he's angry again about these indulgences, the wealth of the church, the power of the Pope. These are things that he finds the church to be at fault for. So we're going to take a look at him now. That's Martin Luther. And then we have on the next, you have another vision of him dressed in his monk's outfit, nailing the 95 Theses, but that, of course, is a painting. So Martin Luther's 95 Theses are published. So beyond being nailed to the church door, which in that time was like nailing them to a bulletin board, if that makes sense, he was very upset where he, in October 1517, is going to go to the castle church in Wittenberg, and he's going to then nail them up on the door. He wanted a full reform of the church. He said that people could win salvation only by faith in God's gift of forgiveness. The church taught that faith and good works were needed for salvation. That goes directly against the idea of the indulgences, where you can purchase salvation for a little fee. So you see his dissatisfaction there. He also felt that all church teaching should be based on the words of the Bible. So he publishes the Bible in German so that many, many more people can read and access the words of the Bible. The Pope and church traditions are false authorities. They're not what you should listen to. You should get your information about God and his beliefs from directly the Bible. So that's another complaint that Luther has with the church. And what he also says is that Jesus, not Pope, is the head of the church. So these are things that are very, very central to his ideas. Jesus is the head of the church, not the Pope. Okay, so don't put your faith in all of these priests. He said all people with faith are equal. That means that people then don't need the priest to interpret the Bible for them. This is going to be upsetting to many church leaders, right? I mean, they are not happy with Martin Luther because of this. He is directly challenging their power. So when you look at him, Martin Luther going to post those 95 Theses, you're going to upset the church leaders. So you see that rendering of him doing that there. So these church leaders have to react because he is setting up a direct, contradiction to the church, and they're frustrated with him. So Pope Leo X excommunicates Martin Luther in 1520. Now remember, Martin Luther is a monk. So he's a very religious man. He is not happy with the church excommunicating him, but he just starts his own branch of the faith and keeps his beliefs going. So the church puts out the Edict of Worms, and the Edict of Worms make Luther an outlaw in the eyes of the church, but within 10 years' time, by 1530, he actually has a formally recognized branch of Christianity today called Lutheranism. So if you've heard of Trinity Lutheran Church or any of the Lutheran churches in the area, that is what they're derived from, the beliefs of Martin Luther. So as Luther's ideas get more and more radical, the Pope thinks of him as a very serious threat. And so what you're going to see is that Luther says to him, I'm not going to take back my words on this. Luther inspires other religious reformers. Ulrich Zwingli believes that theocracy is the best form of government. That means a government ruled by religion. And then you also have John Calvin, who believes in what you call predestination, that God's plan is already decided and that we just basically act it out is the idea with John Calvin. So Martin Luther inspires these guys and eventually many, many more. So you're going to start to see all kinds of new denominations come out of this Protestant Reformation. We already see the Lutherans, you're going to see the Calvinists, and you're going to see many, many more by the time everything's all said and done. We're going to talk about another one tomorrow, but here we have John Calvin, And here is Ulrich Zwingli, just so you get a visual of who they are. So remember, even though the Pope excommunicates him, Martin Luther doesn't care. He doesn't take back a word of the complaints that he put out against the church. And he actually ends up burning the Pope's decree and throwing it into a fire. So his excommunication does little. And remember, we talked in the past about how excommunication was like the end-all of your life. So you see, this is questioning the church, questioning the spirit of the Renaissance, coming through in the Reformation, and the church is not going to be the same. They're going to have to figure out how they're going to meet the challenges and not lose too many more members, especially when what we talk about tomorrow comes to pass and you see the English, Henry VIII, doing the same kind of thing. So when we get there, we'll talk about that tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Have a good evening.